Salutations from space. This is Gemini Brett. We're going to talk a bit about 4 stages of mastery and tie this into temperament and the elements that we honor in astrology. This is the zodiac to me and how it is formed. This sacred pattern, the seed of life, shows us with our eyes how creation creates in 12s. 12s have triplicity and quadruplicity, as well as polarity. 10 cannot do all of these things. And we often say this is why we count in tens, because we have 10 fingers, but you can also do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I could even apply signs and get to the summer solstice and the winter solstice and work with this on the horizons and all sorts of other things that maybe I'll show you another time. Importantly here, I'm showing how the seed of life, which is 6 circles around 1 circle, all of the same radius, creates a 6-petaled flower of silver on the inside of the original circle and a 6-petaled flower of gold on the outside of the original circle. Those would be the chalice signs, the down and in signs, the water and the earth signs, and the blade signs, the up and out signs of the air and the fire, inner signs and outer signs, okay? So often we'll associate those with lunar and solar, or nocturnal and diurnal, which is interestingly, it's interesting because you can never have the 6 diurnal signs above the horizon visible and the 6 nocturnal below the horizon invisible, right? That's more of a statement of the houses, which are shown in this image created by myself and Anna Zaharia, Arts of the Chart. The houses, the light houses above the horizon and the dark houses below the horizon are shown by the Taiji, which you may know as the yin-yang, okay? I'm also showing a cross of matter here that represents 4 signs, in this case the cardinal signs, which are connected by modality, we often say, which is one of the 3 quadruplicities. The cardinal signs, the fixed signs, and the mutable signs all belong to a group in that regard. Whereas the elements are signs connected by triplicity. There are 4 groups of 3. Fire signs, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, the earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, air, Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius, and water, Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So we're going to look today at temperament and what's called the square of opposites. And this is old stuff. This is actually, in a way, I shouldn't say pre-astrology at all. But it's important to know that this idea of building the 12 signs of the zodiac through element and modality is, I mean, it's not new, but it's not as old as astrology, right? So we had the idea of polarity of signs. That's these 2 sixes, the lunar 6 and the solar 6, if you will, or I'd rather say the inner 6 and the outer 6. That's an ancient thing, but the elements came online like kind of through Aristotelian philosophy or before that, which was connected to the temperaments. And you might have heard these descriptions like phlegmatic or sanguine or whatever, choleric. That's an idea of temperament, and that later was connected to signs through an idea of 4 elements. Really 5, ether, but in a sense that is composed of all of the signs, and that's a tale, or elements, and that's a tale for another time, okay? So I'm just going to speak a little bit about the 4 elements and the temperaments, and then we'll get to this idea of 4 stages of mastery and attempt to connect them together. All right. So inner signs and outer signs are here, you'll see, and it's kind of, in a sense, fixed to the rise, ascendant, the reach, midheaven, the rest, descendant, and the roots, the IC, the bottom of the heavens below the ground, okay? And I'm showing air, fire, and earth and water. Now, if you're a student of the energies of the directions through like Lakota cosmology or other, you'll often know the west to be water. And here I'm showing earth. So I guess I'll address the difference of the two. If we put water at the deepest, or sorry, earth at the deepest, and then water, air, fire, that's really working like from an alchemical point of view through density, if you will. That earth is the most dense, and then water, and then air, and then fire. But what I'm showing here is the relationship of the daily motion, rise and reach and rest and root, ascend, culminate at the midheavens, set at the descendant, and then root in the middle of the night, at least for the sun, at the imum celi, the IC, the bottom of the heavens, and relating that, what's called the primary motion, the daily motion of the heavens through Earth's spin, to the secondary motion, the yearly motion of the heavens through Earth's orbit, right? And we can connect that, of course, to seasons, right? And the temperaments of the seasons have long been honored in this particular order. So I'll move sunwise, which in the northern hemisphere is clockwise, and we'll move from, well, let's go from winter, okay? So winter was known in association with the water element because winter is cold and moist. All right, so you'll see at the bottom down there, blue, undivided, pointing down, water, okay, which we can say is feelings, heart center, okay, down, cold and moist. Now, am I saying your heart is cold? No. And actually, astrologically, in the medical association, the heart is associated with Leo, right, which is a fire sign. So many ways to pet the cosmic cat, and when we study these many systems, they often will seem to disagree. It's not about saying one is right and one is wrong. It's about, in my opinion, finding the links between, and even ways in their disagreements where we'll find more information, not less. Because I would never say the heart in your chest is cold. But the idea of water being moist and cold. So the downward pointing elements, which we draw, water undivided and earth divided, down and in. Water, feelings, where is the heart? It's in the body, the earth, and the body, brain, our senses, the heart, brain, our feelings, okay? Both of these are about embodiment, right? And shown in the silver flower here, inside the circle, inner signs, okay? And setting in the west brings us back down, brings the heavens down to earth, the marriage of the heavens and the earth, the descendant relationship in that realm, right? And I like showing earth glyph there, not only because of the connection of primary and secondary, because we'll see how this really makes sense with the seasons, but that the horizon is a horizontal line, just like the earth glyph, right? In the middle of the night, like the sun at the IC, it's going down, and then in that same moment, it's coming back up. And I like how with the water triangle, I could kind of rearrange it so it's looking up or down. You can't do that with the earth glyph. It has this very solid earth, right, horizontal line that shows you it's about going down. Just as if we call this the ascendant on the left, where you see the air glyph, which goes up, well, but why does the east rise? The east rises, the heavens rise in the east because earth is falling in that direction. You see, we descend into matter, come into the body to feel. The monkey suit has a heart because feeling opens the gateway to healing, opens the gateway to knowing, and that is the gateway to growing, which is the gift that we offer in our personal growth to the growth of the one thing spirit. All right. So we descend into matter to lift spirit up, just as earth falls towards the east so the heavens can rise, you see. But in the middle of the night, where the sun begins its climb, that's down at the IC, at the roots of the thing. So we look at this water glyph and we see moist and cold. And on a seasonal perspective, this is the winter solstice even, which of course begins tropical Capricorn and earth sign and the cusp of Sagittarius in Capricorn, fire and earth, at least for the northern hemisphere, and that's not going to agree with this elemental association. So again, many ways to pet the cosmic cat. Why not pet the cat every way we can, all right? So moist and cold, what is that? So you'll see here moist, hot, dry, and cold, okay? These obviously belong in polarities or pairs, hot and cold, and moist and dry. Okay, hot excites. Hot lifts things up, right? Go outside in the sun and I might sneeze because the dust particles start rapidly moving, right? Cold brings the energy down, right? So day lifts us up. How do you feel at 3 p.m. versus 3 a.m.? That is merely hot and cold. So from the daily perspective or primary, hot is above the horizon and cold is below the horizon, which makes sense, right? What about moist and dry? Moist connects and gathers together, while dry separates. Think about mud, moist, all of the grains coming together in one clay, where dry, sand, all of the grains separated. You know, the grains of sand on the beach. There's more of those than stars in the universe or whatever. It's an amazing thing, at least the galaxy. All right, so water or winter, moist and cold. And this is the truth when you go outside, you know. So cold brings the energy down, but moist brings the energy together. We are all sitting inside, huddled together in tribe, right, at the time of winter. And then here comes the spring. And the spring brings the light, right? Now day overcomes night. And so we're moving up into hot place, lifting the energy up, but it's still wet. If you want to bring this to the daily correlation and see that horizon in the earth glyph, air, okay, we'll go outside at sunrise and it's certainly getting light going towards heat, but wet, right? There's still dew on the ground. There's still mist in the valleys and whatnot. And this is the nature of spring. And then the middle of the day, often seen as fire, all right? Hot and dry. So hot lifting us up, dry. Now we're out and about on our own individual thing. It's when we come home in the evening, right, where we're coming back into cold, the energy comes down and that brings us into this connection of home, right? So if I want to say daily, maybe you're sharing a bed with your partner or whatever in your dream place in the cold and moist, and you wake up and maybe you're sharing the morning meal together and you're talking about what's alive for you in the day to come, and then you're out separated and doing your thing, and then you come back home to come back together, etc. And this cycle of life is happening. So from the seasonal correlation, water is winter, air is spring, fire is summer, and earth is autumn. And so that movement here shown clockwise interestingly disagrees with, like Lakota, like I was taught that and it's a Western trip applied to Lakota cosmology, that the East is like air and the South, where in the Northern Hemisphere, that means where the sun culminates is like fire. And then the West is like water. And then the North is like earth, the true medicine wheel that I've seen or been taught by elders of that tradition, it's more of a statement of colors, of sacred animals connected, and less traditionally anyway about elements. But you'll see in the medicine wheel often that the east will be yellow, sunrise. The south will, and this is northern hemisphere, the south will be red, fire, midday. That the west will be black, going into the darkness, the sun sets. And then the north, which in the northern hemisphere is the IC, in the middle of the night place that holds the sun, north, it is white in the medicine wheel. In the Maya tradition, you'll see red on the east and yellow at the south and black at the west, and then white at the north. So many ways to pet the cosmic cat. And I'm always interested in looking at these different systems, looking at the location of that particular wisdom tradition, looking at its geography and topography and all sorts of other things. But we're going to apply this idea of temperament and the connections to the elements as we engage with this contemplation about the 4 stages of mastery, at least one perspective of that. So just to do this one more time on the square of opposites, as this image is called, not always shown with the 4 circles of that sacred geometry, but the air element is hot and moist. It's about going up, lifting us up, but connecting, okay? The fire element, undivided, let me say this about the air, divided, like you have your thought, I have my thought, right? Fire, will, spirit, intuition, we share one flame, undivided. Hot and dry, picks us up, but look, separates us. So that seems to in a way conflict with this flow, and I'll let that be what it is and continue to roll. The earth element is cold and dry, brings us down and separates us. And this for sure, like earth is divided, we all have our own body. So air, mind, and I don't mean mind like that's some bad thing, capital M, thought, okay, fire, intuition, which we usually think of as a heart thing, that's empathy, that's feeling. Knowing, the intuition of knowing, is fire, okay? Earth, about the body, it's about growing. We need time and space for motion to grow. This is why we embody here, I'm convinced. And then the water, the heart, cold and moist, undivided. We all share one heart. You have your feelings and I have mine, but we're really all traveling on the same stream when it comes down to it. All right. And that these are opposites. Fire is opposite earth. Air is opposite. Fire is opposite water. Those are the undivided. One heart, one spirit, intuition, empathy. And air is opposite earth. Okay, but you can't go from air to earth or earth to air, which is an interesting trip because you may notice that this does not work with the zodiacal order of like Aries, fire, to Taurus, earth, right? You could just do that from fire at the top to earth on the right. Well, now you would go to Gemini, air, see how you're bouncing all the way across to the other side, and then the Cancer, water down here, and you're kind of doing, this shape, not doing a full circular motion here on the square of opposites. Alchemically, we would say this, think about in modern times, and this I first heard from my friend Gary Caton, we're about to shift out of 200 years of Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions and Earth signs. And the last will be the last actually was in 2000 in the sign of Taurus, Jupiter and Saturn conjoined. Now, in 80, 81, we had a preview of the element to come, which is the air element. But Jupiter and Saturn will shift their conjunctions in air element signs of the tropical zodiac on December 21st, 2020, next year, when Jupiter and Saturn conjoin in the first degree of Aquarius. And this begins full stop, a commitment to the air element for the Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions for about 200 years. Well, how do you go from Earth, here on the right, cold and dry, to air, hot and moist? And the answer is you either have to move through cold and moist to add some moisture to the cold and dry to find air, or you've got to go through the fire. So it's a really interesting trip. And this is an amazingly powerful map that I'm showing here. Again, created by myself and Anna Zaharia, Arts of the Chart, for all sorts of amazing astrological contemplations and otherwise, and themes of many stages of life. And so let's go there and get to this topic of 4 stages of mastery. And the way that I related these to temperament and then to element, personally today, coming out of Tai Chi, like you'll probably hear me on some weird contemplative trip on Mondays frequently, not next week, because I'm in Tai Chi on Mondays now, and it's been amazing for me. I cannot recommend Qigong and Tai Chi more. It's like really good medicine for me to tune into my own electric of my body, right? So why I connected these 4 stages of mastery to temperament is because, like the square of opposites, they're composed of 4 things created through a combination of 2 polarities. All right, and the polarities in this description of 4 stages of mastery are this: conscious and unconscious, and competence and incompetence. Okay. So we say, oh, conscious good, competence good, unconscious bad, incompetence bad. That's not the trip here, okay? But it's just this, like, for example, and how I'm on this trip right now is like in Tai Chi, I'm relearning to walk. I'll say another thing that has this contemplation really alive for me right now is my eldest niece, Whitney, has her driver's permit, and I'm one of her driving instructors, right? So you and I drive the car with the body brain. We've been doing it for a long time. The mind is thinking about where you're going or where you're coming from or the many things you have to do or that astrology thing you just learned on the webinar, whatever it may be. You know, that's like the air, the mind is like doing its many things, right? The heart, maybe you're driving your car and you're crying because, you know, your grandmother's dying, or you're in that beaming joy because you just met some fella, or, you know, whatever. Like the heart's got its own trip happening, you know. The body drives the car. It stops at the stop signs and does all that. It's, you know, maybe our impulses or responses to electrical stimulation from the mind's calculation, maybe, probably not. There's more of a neuron happening in your gut, body, brain than there is in the mind, actually, especially when it comes to things like jumping out of the way of the oncoming bus. It's not a mind thing at all. If it is, you're likely to get struck, right? Sometimes you need to turn off your thought and act. And in a way, that's a fire response. But from one way that I connect to these three, the three-bodied being, as was described in some expressions from Gurdjieff, though many say he taught 4. But like in his Beelzebub's tale to his grandson, the human being is described as a 3-brained being. And this is kind of the trip. We have our thoughts, we have our feelings, and we have our senses. Okay. Now, if we can get all those three in line, earth, water, and air, then we access the fire. So many spiritual traditions will have practices, that's earth, like mala beads, right? Counting your 108. In fact, the cool thing is you don't have to count, which is a mind thing, because the bead technology, there's 8 and you feel where you begin again, you know? You're going to actually use this instead of being mind and thought. You're going to tune it to a powerful kind of directive application of that power of mind brain through like mantra or affirmation or whatever, or toning, you know. So the body brain is moving the malas, right? But the rest of it is sitting and still. The mind brain is chanting the mantra, for example, but the rest of it is sitting and still. And then between the mind and the body is this heart. And so we can tune it in and entrain it so all three are aligned, and that accesses fire, which in a sense is like higher mind, spirit mind. Got it? And really the other three, I wish I had this image up to show you this. And I'm just going to take a quick look for it on my computer because Anna and I also created, where would that be? My search function is not working. Anna and I also created an image of this idea of the 4 elements applied through the 3-brained being that I'm describing now. And I'm just going to look for it in one more place as I babble and try to multitask. Let's see if it's in here. Seeing all sorts of musical notes and all sorts of other things. No. But I see this image, which can also be fun to play with in this regard. So I'll share this image of some fire. You know, it's really fun, I think. It's powerful, I should say, to contemplate astrology in nature. And one of my favorite ways to learn the elements is to sit with a burning fire. And I started doing this when I was living in Seattle, where often the wood is wet. And my image of that, if wood, earth is body, and water, wetness is feelings, then that idea was like, okay, well, the wood can't catch fire, spirit, because of all these suppressed emotions, right, or suppressed feelings. So first I have to bring my consciousness to this, and mind, contemplation, and this is the air. And so we blow in the air to catalyze the fire, and the wet wood eventually will catch, you see? But anyway, I'll let you envision your own mind, a being sitting in meditation with this air sign triangle at the brain and the water sign triangle at the heart and the earth sign triangle at the gut, and all of that encompassed within this fire trine, which in a way, actually, we don't want to say the fire is only up there. We want to bring that one spirit, that one fire down into here, out of the one and into one thee. That's you, or that's me. And when the fire lives at the hara, between, in a sense, like the roots of the body and the heart, then we have that gentle alchemical fire to warm the feelings, and so we can express rather than suppress, so the wood can catch. Okay. So back to this idea of the 4 stages of mastery, of competence and incompetence, and conscious and unconscious. Okay, so driving really for you is like you've mastered this. Let's go to like much more imperative and basic functions, breathing. So many of you watching this are yogis, you know, and you've learned to breathe consciously. But before then, you were breathing. you might actually feel now that you never were until you learned, right? Or so I'm learning to walk in Tai Chi, like literally, and feeling my body in that flow. And I'm tying this very much to my sacred astronomy practice, right? If like my weight shifts to one foot, that's the root, and the other foot rises and reaches its height and rests and sets down, and then as it roots, the weight shifts there, and then the other foot rises and reaches and rests and roots, and I'm moving my body like this, which is part of the Qigong practice, and then my feet are moving accordingly to the motion, not of the feet, but rather of my own motion of my dantian or my center or my har, or that one fire, or whatever it wants to be. So in a way, I am becoming conscious that I am an incompetent walker, which is interesting because I walked to get there, and I walked away from there much more consciously than I walked there, and there is Tai Chi practice. And this happens every week. And more now, as I'm just walking around town or the house, suddenly I'm like, oh, wait, shift your weight. Rise and reach and rest and root and feel that motion that allows, be conscious of it. Okay. So the stages of mastery work like this. Unconscious incompetence. We could also call this simple ignorance. This is the place where ignorance is bliss. So it sounds offensive when we say ignorance. It's simply not knowing a thing. An unconscious incompetence is not knowing that you don't know a thing. So let's say that the way that I walk is not like embodied walking, right? So what is embodied walk? I didn't even know that was a thing, right? The way that I breathe, and like my super consciousness is doing that. Like I'm not consciously breathing unless I begin to, and then I might always, but probably not. There's a mastery there, which is actually in unconscious competence. That's the highest stage. So we're going to move through unconscious incompetence, right? So before I started learning astrology, I didn't even know that I didn't know astrology. I had never heard of astrology. It was unconscious incompetence. I was absolutely incompetent within the ways of astrology, but I had no idea that I was incompetent. It wasn't even on the radar, right? And in a way, that's like the waters and the safety of the heart. I can feel good. That's this ignorance is bliss. Now that I know astrology exists, I also know that it is endless. Yeah? And that shifts me actually from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. Part of me, as far as astrology goes, will always live in that place. I will always, in a way, be conscious that I can never be completely competent in the endless study of astrology, right? But knowing that, I can choose to learn. And this is where actually you shift, in a sense, to an air function. I'm now conscious of this. And I'm conscious that there are astrology masters, and I'm not yet one of them, and they have their mind and I have mine, etc. And it also is the gateway between simple ignorance, which is not knowing you don't know a thing, to complex ignorance, which is knowing you don't know a thing. Shifting from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence, which can be a drag. It also opens the very important gateway of discernment. You're not going to learn everything. You know a lot of, you don't know a lot of things that you'll never learn. So you have to pick and choose. What will my art be? And, what is my instrument? And then how do I play my scales? Right? So let's say I want to play jazz. Well, suddenly jazz is a thing. I want an instrument, and wow, I am shifting from that unconscious incompetence. I didn't even know jazz or saxophones were a thing. Well, now I want to play like that cat, and I have no idea how to even make sound out of this amazing, intricate collection of metals and leathers and whatnot, So then I got to play my scales. Right? And that is actually shifting now, doing the practice, coming into earth, you see, how am I going to play versus how do the ones I want to play, whatever, that's happening through practice. And so that's going to help me move from conscious incompetence to conscious competence. And now when the piano player plays, a C minor 6, I know, because I've played my scales, what notes are going to be in and which ones are going to be out. And that doesn't mean in good and out bad. It's just how am I going to put those things together to make music, move it. But eventually you get, and I got to say, with the saxophone, I'm seldom here, to unconscious competence. Piano player plays that thing and I just rip it. And there's absolutely no thought or no robot response to that's a chord like this. These are the notes that fit. This is my move. This is my go-to place to play in that realm. And now I sound good. No, it's like, here's that sound and this is my response. And it's not a reaction. There's no thought. It's just pure, like, fire, pure spirit. So, when I hit stop here shortly, I'm going to get up and walk outside into the sun, and I'll just be walking, right? And I can walk. And because I've reached a level of mastery. Did I always have that? No, right? When I was first born, I couldn't walk at all. In fact, I wasn't anywhere near my body, and I probably didn't even know walking was a thing. At some point, I observed people walking, and I was like, whoa, I can't do that. And then I started learning to stand up because I wanted to, because that walking thing seems cool. So suddenly I shifted from unconscious incompetence, I can't walk, but I don't even know that walking is a thing, to conscious incompetence. Oh, those walking beings can do stuff. I want to do it like that. Now I'm going to shift from that conscious incompetence, which can be a heavy space, can it? And I'm going to fall 1,000 times and walk around like some little tiny drunk person trying to sort it out, aren't I? Right? And you can see that conscious incompetence, right? But through that practice, I'm now going to shift my conscious incompetence to conscious competence. I can walk, but I'm sure as heck thinking about left foot, right foot, what can I grab onto in case I fall, whatever, you see? And then suddenly all of that's gone, and I'm just walking to go and grab that shiny thing across the room or whatever it may be. And now I'm in a place of unconscious competence. That's the mastery. Unconscious competence. So there, unconscious, good thing, right? What about unconscious incompetence? Can be the best thing ever, right? Like, I am so glad to not know about so many of the things that I don't know about. I'm so glad that I don't know them, because I have a very curious mind and I really want to figure things out. Like geology is a great example. I walk around and see these rocks and I'm like, how did that form? And I have no clue. these crystals and things, and I want to speak about like spiritual essence of obsidian, but I don't really know how it's made. And so then I have to go look online, and it's cool that I can, and I learn about volcanic glass and whatnot, and that helps me contemplate how cool this thing is and why its own trauma helps me look at the sun through it without burning my eyeball. And right. So I will shift in that sense from unconscious incompetence to why, oh, now I have conscious incompetence, to, oh, let's learn about that conscious competence, to at one point I understand so much more about it because I've stopped trying to know, and that relaxation of the need to know opens the gateway to, in a sense, like a more intuitive knowing process. Okay. So I'll say this, that the unconscious incompetence, in a way, it's like the water. I feel safe and rested and open-hearted in a way because I don't know that I don't know a thing. It's great. That's ignorance is bliss. That's not a bad thing, by the way, right? But we'll shift to the air, and suddenly I see this thing that I want to do. I want to be able to walk. I want to be able to breathe rightly, or like Tai Chi right now, like I'm literally seeing my deficiencies in both those things that have become habituated patterns that are actually like leading to injuries and stress in my every moment, you know? So, oh, okay, now I'm conscious that I might be able to walk, but I can't walk. I might breathe, but I don't really breathe. Right. And so that's this kind of air sign in this mind. Like, let me look at that. Okay, cool. Well, now I want to figure that out, says mind. Great. Well, flip that flow. Go to that opposite side. And actually, now that I'm just drawing lines in space, let's look at this image again. And say, in a sense, here we are. And I might come up from the water to the air in this regard, but to get to that fire, I'm going to have to shift over to my practice. And so it's cool to look at this pattern of this square of opposites, which in a way breaks the rules. But if I go from unconscious incompetence here, and that ignorance is bliss, and then I go to ignorance is the most stressful thing alive because now I know what I don't know. Okay, well, now I want to learn it, and that's going to bring me across the divide through my practices to conscious competence. But I might have that, but I don't really have it until it becomes unconscious. Right. And now I'm in that place of more of an intuitive experience. Who's breathing you? What's breathing for you? You know, what is walking for you? When I want to grab this water bottle, what just did all that? Now, as I'm describing it, you know, I'm a little bit more connected to something's happening that says left hand, grab that water bottle that's right there and flip the thing and take a sip. But even as I'm describing that, I have no idea what does this and this. You know what I mean? But through a conscious now attention and practice of lifting my fingers, maybe one at a time, like some of you can do that really well. Notice that I need to like hold my finger down, it's Mercury, my pinky to lift my ring finger. Some of you are like super magic yogi, all your feet and toes do the wiggle right and all that, yeah? Because you have moved from unconscious incompetence, my toes are toes, to conscious incompetence, I can't move them individually, to practice to find conscious competence. This is how I move my pinky, this is how I move my ring toe, whatever, to unconscious competence. My toes wiggle, yo. Thanks for wiggling your toes with me, friends. You will find me at morethan.astrology.com, soon to be GeminiBrett.com, and that latter place will redirect you. If you saw the film at the beginning, you were like, wow, I want to learn some of this sacred astronomy stuff. Cool. Get 6 hours of sacred astronomy training, my gift for you, among other things, for free by entering your email at morethan.astrology.com/free. Morethan.astrology.com alone will show you a place where you can book a session with me if you want to hear the way that I hear the song of your soul. I love doing charts, and you'll also find a donate button at morethanastrology.com just in case you're in this space. Invitation, no expectation, to give a little something back for what you may have received here. But the greatest thing that you can give is your presence, and so thank you for that. And as the algorithms work, give this video a like, whether you're seeing it live on Facebook or later there on YouTube. You know, maybe leave a comment. That certainly fuels my rocket ship. And share it around with folks like us that are on this quest to know more about life. Love and planets, friends. I will see you in space.